Moving on, Brian Nicol, who is 955. No. He's page number 67. Want to just check out the area? Okay, Councillors, how are we going? Want a tea or you're okay? Keep going. One more. 10:05, okay, so we can carry on with the TRG if you like, Mr. Ludbrook. Mr. Tony Ludbrook, on page 24. Good morning.
Mayor Trewavas and Councillors. Firstly, I don't know if the observant amongst you have seen that we look as though we have a uniform, Tim and I, with our coloured jerseys, but that's just purely fortuitous. Is this working? Yes.
Yep.
I would just like to start by saying that the work that Council has done has certainly been very appreciated, and I think in particular with regard to the keeping a cap on the rates increase and the increased reduction in debt, and can keep up the good work, please. That's very much appreciated by the ratepayers. You have my submission in front of you, but I want to just raise concerns that I have about the consultation process for the Waitāhunui water scheme, which is what I'm going to discuss. The thing that comes through, if you look at the call for submissions, are twofold. One is a submission on the availability charge, and the other is rates and charges. And the most important part of what's going on with the Waitāhunui water scheme is in fact the related to the capital contribution, and that has been set at I think 2,450 for every household that's going to join up with the scheme down there, and if all members of that community join up with it, then we're looking at just over $500,000. And what Council have in place is that they want to shift the onus of the payment by Waitāhunui onto the shoulders of the ratepayers, the ratepayers tied up with the Taupo water scheme. And this I think it came up in your consultation glossy flyer, which went out, and it has put down what you're expecting to take place, usually in some little balloon. So there are a whole lot of balloons there, and here we are, something so important that it hasn't actually been put up for submission. And I don't think that's appropriate. I think here we are dealing with 500,000 plus that you're wanting to put onto the ratepayers, the non-Waitāhunui ratepayers, and it has not been put up for submission. If I could just read a document to you to refresh your memory here, This document's labelled the Waitāhunu Water Supply, Attachment B, and the summary of this states an alternative proposal is to connect Waitāhunu to the Taupo water scheme, with the cost for this project to be distributed across the Taupo scheme. This proposal would mean consultation is required across the Taupo scheme catchment, and there would be no capital cost to the Waitāhunu community for connection. This ensures that the proposal becomes as affordable as can be possible. And I draw your attention to the proposal there. There's also at one of the council meetings, there is another document there which specifies consultation on that, as well as consultation on the availability charge. So I think at this point of time it seems inappropriate to be trying to make any moves on this. I think the community need to really decide to be informed properly and to decide whether they feel happy with the $500,000 that they're going to shoulder for Waitāhunu. Now, if I can, I'd like to go now to my submission, which is before you, and you have read that, no doubt. So I will just go through some of these points. Firstly, the majority of Waitāhunu residents are not in favour of joining the scheme, and there have been repeated meetings, and they're not going to shift very readily. One of the reasons that is given is the reluctance of the householders because of the requirement to pay for the service. These payments are, firstly, the connection, or for the connection are the capital contribution that I mentioned, $2,450, plus the annual water rates. We haven't in that document taken into account anything such as the cost to those people of personally having to connect up to the Toby and run it into their house. And that's an additional cost. Now, I'm led to believe that many of the residents at the meetings with council have expressed not the belief, but the firm belief that the water was their right and they were not going to pay for it. And so this obviously has been the reason why council has turned around and looked at other measures. Now, the first of those was clearly to approach the funding authorities down in Wellington looking for another $500,000. Now that sort of looks as though that was the money that council were looking for to cover and subsidise the set-up fees that or set-up charges that the householders are going to incur. I think that what does council plan to do here? We have before us the amendment regarding the availability charge, which we don't support, the TRG, but council are looking to have us as ratepayers in Taupo pay for the capital contribution. And then on top of that, there is the thing of the annual water charge of $470. Now, when you have a community that is firmly against paying anything for their water, you can be quite certain that there will be a huge default on this for those who join up. So is council planning again to have another, put out another submission for remission of those rates. Another point I'd make is that Council cannot impose a water scheme on the Waitahunu community when they have expressed reluctance to join. I believe it is irresponsible use of ratepayers and taxpayers' money to put in a pipeline knowing that the take-up rate of this will be very limited. Other water areas throughout the Taupo District have been user pays. And to set up a water scheme for Waitahanui as a non-user pays, I believe sets a very dangerous precedent. First off the block will be 5 Mile Bay. They're going to be supplied on the same line. And Council will have to be very aware of the problems here. If you're going to deliver water to Waitahanui gratis, and then you're going to expect 5 Mile Bay to pay all the set-up fees or set-up charges. Council obviously has taken a lot of note of the classification of Waitahanui under the Social Deprivation Index. And if Council considers, and I would say I think we probably need to have more consultation on this, but if they consider that because of the social deprivation in that area, water should be supplied gratis to the householders, then I would argue very strongly that it is not the responsibility of the ratepayers to fund areas of social deprivation. Council needs to have a look or look for additional funding for the capital contribution, be it looking centrally or looking locally, but definitely not the ratepayers. If Council is unable to obtain funding, it will need to pursue the other stated alternative, which is to upgrade the water purification of the 37 Waitahanui properties that are currently connected to the Council's existing water supply. And I know that this is considered a costly exercise, but I don't believe you can put a costly line into Waitahanui with the current situation, knowing full well that the take-up rate is going to be very poor if there's any sense of money having to be paid for it. As I said, I believe that's irresponsible. With regard to the actual thing that was asked for submission, I'm not submitting on the fees and charges, but the original intent here, and I put it in my submission, was to submit on the rates remission for the proposed or for the amendment. For the general availability charge. Now, finally, TRG would recommend that any water reservoir, if water was going to be supplied to Waitahanui, should be on Council land, and we would fully support the argument that you give about the uncertainties that would lie ahead if it was on any other, the other alternative. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you for your time. I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ludwig. Nice to have you here this morning. and your submission. Do we have any questions of Dr. Ludbrook? Councillor Park.
Thank you, Tony. Always a pleasure to hear from you. Just so, in TRG's opinion, basically it's a $3 million sort of project. Do you think it's irresponsible if we do it? Do you think it's also irresponsible of us to decline 1.9 million of central government funding?
Well, I think you're being influenced too much by this money, and you're making rather unwise decisions just to grab that money. And I think, council are going to regret this, because people in this area are not willing to have this disparity between who gets free water and who doesn't, and certainly not to prop up the free water.
Okay, so in the big picture of things, I haven't decided how I feel about this. I'm still open-minded about it, but so in the big picture, I mean, a $3 million project will cost the district $1 million in round numbers, and you think we should just let that go for the sake of maybe some unpaid rates?
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying, and I've thought about this at length because I knew it was going to be one of the first questions. I really believe you need to consult with the community a bit more, those who are going to be expected to pay, and call for submissions. And then I think a bit more work has got to be done with discussing with the residents of Waitahanui who are so opposed to this, and very firmly opposed. But also you should be looking at an option of whether local funding could be of any benefit to that community. And I think that is an option that should be seriously pursued.
Councillor Harvey.
It is an interesting one, and like Councillor Park, I mean, we're also aware, and I don't know whether you are, that there are some areas down there that don't have suitable drinking water at all. Mm-hmm. So we do have a responsibility of some sort to supply that. So there is that catch-22 situation.
Yes.
And we have consulted several times with people down there.
With the same result, may I say?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. However, like anything, people sell and move on. So what happens to the new people that are coming to the district all the time, and they may want the new water. And for those who, as I said, have no suitable alternative, what are we supposed to do with them?
Well, it's very easy, isn't it? To my way of thinking, you obtain the funding to subsidise the free water to an area of deprivation. And if it's not government who's going to do that, then, and they've knocked you back already, but, and it's interesting that they have, but there are other sources of funding. And there is
They've been explored, of course.
Yes, I know, but there is a very strong move for Timana OTY, and this should be looked at more seriously.
Dr. Ludbrook,
that would overcome the problem, because if those residents were then able to be subsidised, and it's justified to try and help them. I'm not saying we don't want to see that, but then you have a clear conscience to set up a line down there, and then of course that can be built on for 5 Mile Bay without the hassle of having to battle with 5 Mile Bay.
I mean, there is always, all sorts of change has some sort of battle, doesn't it?
Yes.
So that's what we have to deal with, weighing up the pros and cons, And when you count the number of households, because we've obviously looked at this in depth, do you battle those who are against it, or do you try and weigh up the benefits for those who are going to come to the area in the future? That's what we have to weigh up.
And then I would go back to looking for additional funding, wouldn't I?
Absolutely.
And then that would solve council's problem.
Just going back to the submission document, what we went out to consult on, did you say that's not enough? Or?
Yeah, I think an important issue like this, where 500,000 is, going to be taken out of general rates or rates for people who are on the Taupo water, I think that this needs to be well advertised and submissions come in for that. And I don't believe that is anything more than just a glossy flyover that then says, we'd like to hear from you. Yet you then look a little bit further down on your website, these are the submissions. And they being, as I said, the availability charge and fees and charges. And this is not mentioned at all. And it actually doesn't take too much to rather feel that could have been put in as a little bit of a smokescreen to, because everyone would just could well think that this whole thing was going through.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah. Thank you for your submission. I was just wondering, when you've written it, have you also considered the firefighting potential that putting this?
Sorry, my hearing's not so good.
Sorry, I'll repeat that. In considering your submission, did you also consider the firefighting capacity that putting the line out there would provide for all those houses?
And what package was it?
Firefighting capacity?
Oh, yes, I'm aware of that, but the firefighting is, of course, already serviced.
This line would provide that service out there, would provide
Yes,
that
but
capacity.
the firefighting is also from the current supply.
No. Oh, well, no.
that
This
not
will
so?
provide that, yeah.
Councillor Williamson?
yeah, through the chair. Thanks, Tony. I always enjoy listening to your voice of reason. Is that, yeah?
Sorry?
I always enjoy listening to your voice of reason. Obviously, your reasoning is that Waitanui community totally oppose it if they had to pay, or if they had to pay to join the scheme. Because if my recent information, what I've got here is that 84% of respondents actually will either connect or they agree with the actual project going ahead, which equates to, at this stage, 28% of people actually joining up to the scheme at about $5 per ratepayer right through the scheme. If 69%, I think if they uptake, would be no cost to the ratepayer at all through the community. Well, how do you feel about that? If that actually
Well, I
eventuated?
sorry, I finished? Yeah.
No, that's right. Yeah.
I think that the principle of what you're trying to do by use ratepayers' money to subsidise that service is wrong. And if council feels that they determined that it is right to do that, then I think I would be very keen to argue against this, what you're currently planning, and to say to council that if you believe you're going to proceed on with this, I think we should fund that from the council funds rather than taking it out of ratepayers, out of the general rate. So here in the books, clearly documented 500,000+ that has gone to Waitahanui. Where you take it from the rates, it gets lost in the whole system. So if that was going to happen, I think I would be pretty keen to convince our members that the right approach was to have this documented as an additional cost in your finance documents.
Somebody?
I'm just
Councillor Stewart.
sorry, concerned. You're saying that it's free water for Waitahanui. The connections are going to be there, but if someone connects to that water, they will be paying. So I see it. Well, one way of I'm looking at it is, because I haven't sort of, it's got to be looked at in all ways, is that it's future-proofing Waitahanui for growth and expansion, and we're getting a subsidy to help us do that. So that's one of the ways that I'm looking at how I'm going to make my decision about this, is that it is future-proofing that an area of our district that has potential, and I see that is a positive, personally.
So I could ask you how you would further develop Waitahanui. It's very restricted now. There's going to be it would be very difficult to extend a line over the hill to Hautapi and further down, and there's not much scope to develop Waitahanui. But I agree with what you're all saying. You know, it's good to take up the funding and that the government have allocated, and to set the pipeline up. But what I'm saying is, to do that, you need to pursue you're going to have to fund the, that contribution, the capital contribution. And I am also saying you're probably going to have to fund a high percentage of the water rates. So you've got to look at it. And to me, if you can find the appropriate funding, then it's a go-ahead.
Councillor Jollins.
So to clarify, Tony, what you'd be saying is TRG would be in support if we could find a different funding mechanism within our current arsenal other than targeting the rates of the water scheme that are at the moment?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes, none of us feel that, that it clearly is an area of deprivation, and, we do need to have support for that area, but it's not our responsibility to do that as Taupo ratepayers.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes, thanks. Through the chair, thanks once again, Tony. This question probably more directed to Dennis, for example. If this project scheme didn't go ahead, for example, in the event of not going ahead, and we're required to upgrade 37 water users down there under the current district council scheme, what would it cost, and who would it cost? Who would be paying, roughly? If you got any idea, Dennis?
I say I don't have a cost off the top of my head, but it would be, the cost would be those 37 that are currently connected to the scheme.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Can I just break in there? There would be a cost developing the filter process, wouldn't there? Purification.
That's correct. That would be part of the upgrade.
And you've been influenced by that in your decision of alternatives, because you considered it too costly. But it's somewhat easy to not explore that quite as well if you know that you've got a grant of whatever, 1.9 million.
Councillor Boddy.
Just raise, excuse me, Tony, thank you for your comments and submission. Councillor Park used the word district funding. It's my understanding, Office of the Council will help, that it'll be an impost on the Taupo water scheme. I mean, there's 19 around the district, so it's not impost on them. The scenario has been put to me. I live in an area where there's a lot of development going on at the moment, and the question raised is, if we subsidise the scheme and say to the people, it's going past your gate, but you don't have to join, Wouldn't it be sensible for a new house owner to cut the cost to put a water tank in, use their own water and not connect on the basis they didn't have to, why should I? So I know when I lived in Bonshaw Park, we looked at joining up, $3,000 on average to join, then about $3,000 it was scrapped. So the real question is, and I understand people saying if someone buys in the future, but if you buy something in the future, you look at what's there and then you make a judgment on that. So does TRG feel that it may set a benchmark for other areas to demand the same and have it funded by others?
Oh, without doubt. I think this is what I said, setting a precedent.
Thank you.
And first off the blocks will be 5 Mile Bay, because they're going to be the first to be connected.
Councillor Park.
Oh, yes, sorry, just through the chair. When I said district, I was just talking about the big picture of things rather than, I know that it is just Taupo Water Scheme.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. So in summing up, basically, you're okay with the scheme as long as the money was found elsewhere.
Yes.
I'm just thinking as an example from the investment fund or where? Council money or from central government?
First of all, you should look for external funding, and
We've got 1.9.
and there are, as I said, two possible sources. It could be local, it could be go back to government. But if you were, as council, were determined that this was to go through, and I would like to say there that it would be good to consult on that and just get the feeling, because there may be other ideas that come out of the community who really aren't very aware of this. But the funding, if it was going to come from council funds, should be allocated and clearly allocated to that role.
And paid for by those that receive the benefit or the whole community?
Well, you're not going to get it paid for.
Well, good question. That's one of the issues that we're faced with. Yeah, the Taupo scheme has 470, I think, next year. The highest is 800 and something for whakaaro. The schemes are different, but
And they will want to carry on. Every other water thing will come back to you and want to do the same thing, come out of council funds. So it's the precedent that you're setting that you have to take note of. It's a very dangerous precedent, I think. Maybe it won't involve all of you, but it will catch up with.
Just on another, with your other hat on as a retired GP, do you think
A retired physician, please.
physician, sorry, would the health benefits of the good quality water? Do you see that there's a cost to that?
Yeah, I don't think anyone could argue on the. It is important. None of us would argue against that. But it's just how you get that established.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Tony.
Okay.
Good to see you. All right. How are we going? Ariel?
I don't think Mr. Nichols is going to be able to attend today, so
Sorry?
I don't think Mr. Nichols is going to be able to attend today.
Okay.
So yes, he can do
Okay, sure. All right. So do you want me to move that resolution? Okay. All right, back to item number 1. There's a suggested resolution there, a recommended resolution that submissions on the consultation document for the annual plan be received. Moved by Councillor Williamson,
I'll second.
seconded by Councillor Krasowski. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, well, so the meeting will be adjourned until, what date? 7th of June for deliberations. 10 o'clock on the 7th of June, deliberations. Councillor Truman, would you be able to give us a blessing before we go and bless us for the week ahead? Thank you.
Kia tau kia tātou katoa te atawhau tō tātou ariki me te aroha o te atou me te whiwhinga tahitanga I roto I te ingoa. Āmene.
Thank you, Councillor Truman. Thank you, everyone.